Welcome to Aligned in Authenticity, soul conversations on alignment, intuition, and living authentically. Lately, I've been reflecting on the major transitions and changes throughout my life. And one of the questions I've been asking myself is, what was the moment things actually began to change? Because a lot of people know when things are no longer working. Yet months, years, and sometimes even decades pass and nothing changes. And when we reflect back on it, it's easy to point to the visible moments, the moment we left the relationship, the moment we started a new career, the moment we moved to a new city, as the moment that things changed. But the more I've reflected upon my own experiences, the more I realize that change actually starts long before the action is taken. Change is a process. And over the next few conversations, I want to explore that process. And I found that the first step in the process is awareness. And at the very beginning of awareness are two things: openness and willingness. So the first question becomes, are you actually open to change? Wanting change is not the same thing as being open to it. You can know something is wrong and still be closed to the possibility of changing. I see and meet people all the time. They've attended the seminars, they've read the books, they've watched the podcast, they've done all the work. Yet years pass and they don't make the changes. And that's because they're actually not at a place within themselves of being open and willing for the change to happen. In past videos, I've told the story of waking up one morning and looking in the mirror and not recognizing the person that was looking back at me. And that being an awakening moment for me. And as I reflect on that moment, what I realized is that I had looked in that same mirror hundreds, if not thousands of times before that day. Yet I didn't see what I saw that day. And what I've came to realize is that was because before that day came, I was not open and willing to actually making changes in my life. I had become complacent with the way my life was. And for a long time, I justified staying where I was because I was protecting my comfortability. I was protecting my financial security. I was protecting my routine. And I was protecting having certainty in my life. And because of those things, I wasn't at the point where I was sick and tired of being sick and tired or completely fed up enough to actually be open, ready, and willing for change to happen. And from what I can recall before that day actually came, there were a series of things that kept occurring in my life. You see, for years, I had heard the whisper. I knew internally that things were off and they just weren't working. But I kept convincing myself otherwise. I kept telling myself I could figure it out. I could make it work. And I wasn't yet ready to step out into uncertainty. I wasn't quite ready for my life to change. And when that day came, and when something inside of me changed and I looked in that mirror and I had a complete awareness that I had not previously had, in that moment, is when change started to happen for me. Because that moment was when I knew things had to be different and I could not continue on with the way things had been. In that moment, I knew that good enough just wasn't good enough anymore. And for a lot of us, because we've already heard the whispers, because we already know things aren't working, because we already know something is off, the first step actually is being at the point where we want the change more than we want the things that we are protecting. And until you get to that point where the change has to happen, where you feel like almost like your life depends on it, and you're willing to do whatever it takes and whatever is needed in order for things to be different, nothing really changes. And so I say to you, if you're watching this video, the very beginning step is to ask yourself, are you truly and actually open for changes to happen and willing to do what's necessary for them to occur? And if you are not, then like Monopoly, do not pass go, do not collect $200. You can stop right here and come back again when you're at the point where you are open and willing. Because until you are open and willing, you will stay stuck. And I think if you get to the point where you realize you're not open and willing, it's important that you bring conscious awareness to the reality of, one, that you are not open and willing, and to two, what are you protecting and why? Are you protecting financial security? If so, why? Are you protecting comfortability? And if so, why? Are you protecting routine and certainty? If so, why? Because protecting those things are perfectly okay and perfectly normal. And some people will spend their entire lives protecting and keeping in place those things and never choosing to fully follow the whisper and the internal knowing. A lot of people will spend their entire lives staying stuck. And if that's the choice you make, it's okay. Just be consciously aware that that is the choice that you are making. Be honest with yourself enough to say, I am choosing my comfortability, my financial security, and my routine over my freedom, over following my knowing, and over fully stepping into my becoming. And then feel free to live in that decision. But when you finally get to the point when you are fed up with being fed up, come back here and start with the process of being open and being willing. And I always tell people, being open and being willing is not something that you need to force. Because a lot of times we feel like we need to be open and willing, but the reality is we're not there yet. There are still experiences you need to go through, still lessons you need to learn, still a path that you need to see out in the course you're on right now. And that's okay. But there will come a point, if you keep bringing conscious awareness to where you are, what you're protecting, and why, when you get sick and tired of being sick and tired, and you get fed up with the knowing, with the whispers, with being out of alignment, and when that point comes, you will want to absolutely make a change in your life. And when you get there, you will know that you are now open and willing. And one of the ways that you will know that you are now open and willing is because you will start to become curious about what is next. Curious about, how do I get myself out of this? Curious about what's on the other side of the life that you've been living and the life that you've come to know. And when you get to that point, there's some essential questions to ask yourself. One of the questions is, why am I feeling this way? Another question is, why does this keep showing up in my life? And the last question is, what do I need right now in the space I'm in to help me navigate and move through this space? And I'll go back to that morning when I looked in the mirror. When I asked myself, why am I feeling this way? I realized it was because I knew things were off. I knew things weren't working. And I knew I had been ignoring, pushing down, pushing away, and trying to pretend like the things that I knew and the way that I felt didn't exist. And when I asked, why does this keep showing up? It was a realization there for me that I kept feeling this and knowing this and going through this pattern because there was something different for me. There were things that absolutely needed to change in my life, and there was something more calling to me that it was time for me to fully acknowledge and step into. And what did I need right then to help me out of that space? You know, that morning as I sat with the realizations and the awareness that was present as I became open and willing and was completely started seeing things in a different way, I had the knowing that I needed help, that I couldn't navigate that space by myself, that I needed to get back to me. And in order to do that, I needed someone there to help me through it. And so that was my next step. You know, looking back on my life, I've realized that every meaningful change began long before I had an answer, before I had a plan, and before I knew what I was going to do. It began the moment I became open and willing enough to pay attention. Because awareness doesn't start when you figure everything out. Awareness begins the moment you become available to seeing what you've been unwilling to see. And while that may seem like a small thing, I found that that's actually the moment things began to change. And it's not because your life is different yet. It's because you're finally open to the possibility that it could be.